Anna's hands were trembling as she hurried out of the house, clutching her thin coat closely. The cold wind howled across the fields, but she was unable to halt her as she ran directly toward the barn. The dense darkness enveloped her, and the lantern, which was suspended outside the barn, cast a faint radiance that beckoned her in, acting as a distant beacon. She paused in front of the heavy wooden door, her heart pounding so violently that it felt as though it would burst from her bosom. The gentle, deliberate sound of hooves shuffling echoed within, as if the horse was anticipating her arrival or had already known she was on her way. The silence was punctured by the groan of the hinges as Anna pushed the door open. Stellan stood before her, his deep black eyes gazing directly at her as he stood erect and majestic. She took slow, deliberate strides toward the horse, swallowing hard. The atmosphere in the barn was oppressive, as if each breath and movement were imbued with a significance that she was unable to articulate. "You were anticipating my arrival, correct?" Her voice was scarcely audible, resembling a confession, barely rising above a whisper. Stellan's head tilted slightly, a minor gesture that appeared to be an affirmative response. Anna was unable to look away, as his gaze was accompanied by a profound understanding and a wordless whisper that held her in position. In a manner that she had never experienced with Lucas, she felt genuinely seen and heard for the first time in years. She experienced a potent surge of emotion that was both perilous and comforting. She extended her hand, allowing the warmth of Stellan's body to permeate her fingertips as it touched his mane. It was as though an electric current was coursing down her spine, and at that instant, she came to the realization that her life had been irrevocably altered. Anna was no longer cognizant of the winds howling outside. Silence enveloped her surroundings. Stellan and a burgeoning secret were the only things present, as the secret was woven through the shadows like a flame that was about to ignite. Anna stood in the barn, her hand gently resting on Stellan's mane, her gaze lost in the remote void. She closed her eyes and took a deep inhalation, allowing the aroma of dry hay, damp earth, and the warm breath of the horse standing silently beside her to fill her lungs. She felt as though she had escaped the frigid, lifeless home, Lucas's vacant stares, and the gnawing loneliness that had eaten away at her soul for years in this tranquil space. She was overwhelmed by memories which surged over her like a tidal wave. Anna once held the belief that love could overcome all obstacles. One day she and Lucas were like blazing flames, unstoppable and inseparable. Lucas's wit and natural charm had caused her to giggle until tears streamed down her face during their initial encounter. She recalled this memory. She recollected the extended evenings spent by the fire, where she and her friends discussed their aspirations for a brighter future. At that time, Lucas had pledged to remain by her side, establishing a life together that they could both cherish. However, these assurances had evolved into a luxury as the years progressed. Anna was unable to recall the last time they had supper together without Lucas's phone buzzing incessantly, as he had become so engrossed in his work, interminable meetings, and extended business trips. It was as though he were hosting a stranger each time he returned home. He would enter the room, drop his luggage, give her a brief embrace, and then vanish behind the laptop screen. Anna made a concerted effort to maintain her grip. Lucas consistently dismissed her with the same weary refrain, despite her efforts to resuscitate their old conversations and prepare romantic dinners. "Anna, I am excessively fatigued. Can we speak later?" However, the future will never arrive. In the past, she was under the impression that time could resolve all issues. However, it only served to exacerbate the distance between them. Lucas was not a malevolent individual. He was not unfaithful, furious, or neglectful in the traditional sense. However, his indifference had caused Anna to feel as though she was gradually fading, becoming a phantom in her own marriage. When Lucas acquired Stellan, she believed it was merely another momentary interest of his. However, Stellan had emerged as the sole source of joy in Anna's otherwise mundane existence. She discovered a tranquility that she had not experienced in years in the horse's profound, deep-set eyes. However, it was not limited to that. Anna was unable to forget the initial encounter she had with Evelyn, the equestrian trainer that Lucas had employed. Evelyn was a formidable woman, with sharp eyes that appeared to penetrate every facade and a quiet melancholy that suggested her own wounds. Evelyn did not speak frequently. However, when she did, her words penetrated Anna's consciousness like missiles, revealing truths that she had previously refrained from acknowledging. She recalled the afternoon when she and Evelyn were standing outside the barn, discussing Stellan. Evelyn's gaze was fixed on her, as if it were piercing every layer of Anna's psyche. She then spoke a sentence that Anna would never forget. "You are aware that horses, such as Stellan, possess the ability to perceive information that humans are unwilling to acknowledge. The strongest bond is occasionally formed by loneliness." Anna had merely smiled graciously and dismissed the situation at the time. Evelyn's words resonated in her mind like a prophecy as she stood before Stellan. She was hesitant to admit it, but it is possible that Evelyn was correct. Her loneliness, the void that Lucas was unable to fill, had gradually brought her closer to Stellan step by step. She gently passed her hand through Stellan's mane, allowing the warmth to permeate her palm. She whispered, "You know, Stellan, I sometimes yearn to be a horse much like you. There are no concerns, no conflicts to contend with. Only liberation." No, Stellan did not respond, however. His expression suggested that he comprehended the situation. Anna experienced a brief and transient sense of relief at that moment. Nevertheless, she was acutely aware that everything was undergoing a dramatic transformation, and there was no turning back. The narrow path leading to the barn was illuminated by the moonlight that extended across the fields. Anna walked slowly, step by step, as if an invisible force was drawing her toward Stellan. She was indifferent to the increasing strength and chill of the wind. A vague and overwhelming tempest was stirring within her, as if her heart was compelling her toward an idea that her mind could not fathom. The hinges groaned into the silence of the night as the barn door creaked open. Stellan stood there, his profound, shadowy eyes reflecting the moonlight. The cold, distant phone calls and the lonely, endless evenings had evaporated, and Lucas was no longer present. It was as though she and Stellan were inseparable, necessitating no explanation. "I presume you were anticipating my arrival once more," she murmured, her own voice resembling a stolen secret. Stellan's sleek black mane was gently touched by her palm as she approached. The horse's warm breath gently puffed against her, providing a calm and soothing reassurance. She caressed him, allowing her fingertips to caress the silky fibers of his coat. There was an apparent alleviation of the weight in her chest, which was displaced by an uncommon sense of tranquility that bordered on the alien. But then the situation changed. Anna was unable to recollect the motivation behind her actions. It is possible that Stellan's eyes were fixed on hers, or that the imperceptible tilt of his head suggested that he was acknowledging her touch. It is possible that the tempest within her, the loneliness, the yearning, and the hollow void she had been unable to fill, were the cause. Her palm gently pressed against the warmth of his face as her hand ceased on the side of his face. She closed her eyes and exhaled deeply. However, even that exhalation was trembling. "Stellan!" Not as a call, but as a confession, she let his name escape from her lips. The horse appeared to respond by lowering his head as he shifted slightly. Anna felt as though he could read the thoughts that were circulating in her mind, as he stood motionless yet full of understanding. His gaze, which was profound, unjudgmental, and undemanding, was so captivating that she was unable to turn away. Her respiration became increasingly labored. She drew closer, as if the distance between them were an insurmountable chasm that required bridging. A prolonged period of silence intervened between them, but the air was dense with expectations. The steady, powerful rhythm of Stellan's pulse was felt beneath her fingers as her hand came to rest on his chest. However, her own heart was a tumultuous cadence that threatened to destabilize her equilibrium. She ceased to contemplate. For the first time in her life, all voices of logic, all notions of morality, and all reason were muted. She was left with the rawness of her emotions, or perhaps a part of herself that she had repressed for an extended period. Anna's world was brought to a halt with a single, insignificant step and a slight forward inclination. She was no longer herself. She was no longer the exhausted, lifeless Anna she had been. She was a woman who was consumed by emotions that she had never experienced before. However, the enchantment was abruptly interrupted by a vague sound. Anna jerked back as if she had been pulled from a fever dream. In that instant, her heart halted as a feeble beam of light pierced the barn. The sharp-eyed horse trainer's gaze was fixed on Anna like a dagger as Evelyn stood in the doorway. Anna was aware, despite her silence. Evelyn had witnessed anything and everything. The barn's atmosphere was frigid. Evelyn's expression was a combination of surprise and dispassionate calculation, as if she were in the process of reconstructing the scene she had just entered. She made no movement. Anna opened her mouth to communicate, but she was unable to articulate any words. She could sense her respiration rising in the frigid night air, as if it were an unspoken confession. She felt an unusual sense of relief, despite the fact that shame, guilt, and anxiety were pressing down on her chest. She was relieved that her secret was no longer hers to bear alone. Anna. The silence was interrupted by Evelyn's voice, which was composed yet authoritative. What do you believe you are accomplishing? The straightforward inquiry penetrated the air with the precision of a knife. Evelyn entered the barn with deliberate but gradual steps. Stellan stood immobile like an anchor, holding Anna in the eye of the tempest as she stumbled back. I am uncertain. Anna's voice was trembling and feeble, and she stammered. Evelyn halted a mere few feet away, her acute gaze piercing Anna's very essence. Are you aware of the direction in which this is going? With a subdued voice, Evelyn inquired, each word striking with the force of a blow. Anna, you are engaging in a game of fire, and once it is consumed, there will be nothing left to salvage. Anna was unable to respond. She stood there, confronted with Evelyn and the emotional tumult that was raging through her. She was aware that Evelyn was correct. She was aware of the truth in those remarks. However, she was unable to halt, despite her awareness of the situation. No, not at this time. No, not when she had already crossed a line that she had previously believed she would never cross. Evelyn's gaze was as sharp as a blade as she stood resolutely before Anna. Anna felt as though she was unable to breathe as the barn's oppressive tension intensified. She was unable to evade Evelyn's gaze, refute the events that had transpired, or articulate any kind of justification for her actions. Anna, did you truly believe that this information would remain confidential? Evelyn's voice was composed, yet it was brimming with a controlled wrath. Did you believe that no one would observe the transformation in you, the distinction in your irises, each time you exit this barn? Anna took a step back, her hand clinging to Stellan's mane as if it were the sole thing preventing her from disintegrating. Yet Stellan, the horse she had once believed comprehended her more than any other being, now stood quiet. There is no sound, no movement. Only a presence that observes everything from an unreachable distance. Anna's voice was hoarse and she croaked, I didn't mean to. She was aware that her remarks were meaningless. She was unable to refute the sight that Evelyn had witnessed, but she was also unable to express the emotion that overtook her, a maelstrom that she could not resist. I did not intend to do so. Evelyn's laughter was brief and pointed, with a hint of bitter irony. Anna, this is not an unforeseen occurrence, it is a deliberate decision, and you are fully aware of your actions. Anna was affected by Evelyn's words like a blow to the chest. However, she did not experience regret. Rather, she felt as though she was being pushed to the brink of a precipice. The storm within her, which included shame, wrath, and a desperate yearning, grew and threatened to overtake her. What is the reason for your concern? Anna's voice was nearly audible as she snapped, but it was louder than she had intended. This is my existence. You are unaware of the hardships I have endured and the solitude I experience. Evelyn's expression remained unwavering. Evelyn responded, you are correct. I am not an expert in all areas. Her voice was subdued but resonant with significance. However, I am aware that you are causing harm to not only yourself but also those in your vicinity. Anna felt vulnerable, as though she had been divested of her clothing. She stood there, bewildered by the haunting silence of Stellan and Evelyn's frigid, piercing gaze. Now she felt that every justification and excuse she had previously given herself were meaningless. She was merely a woman who was ensnared by emotions that she was unable to manage. Lucas will never comprehend, Anna stated, her voice falling to a whisper. She averted her gaze, her eyes capturing the moonlight that was streaming through the cracks in the barn wall. He has never comprehended my perspective. Not really. Is this the reason you are taking this action? Evelyn approached, and the distance between them diminished to a mere few steps. Anna, I am not present to render judgment on you. However, it is imperative that you comprehend. This action will not provide you with the liberation you anticipate. It will only exacerbate the situation. Anna desired to dispute and shout in a manner that Evelyn was unable to comprehend. However, how could she refute the veracity of Evelyn's assertions? How could she disregard the fact that she had crossed a line that she would never be able to undo? The tension was abruptly broken by a sudden disturbance which penetrated the silence like a blade. Anna was frozen, her head snapping in response to the noise. In the field, the beam of a car's headlamp sliced through the darkness like a razor, sweeping across the area. Lucas! Her heart seized, and she felt herself become rooted in place, her body becoming frigid. Evelyn peered at Anna, her sharp gaze softening just slightly, a glimmer of strange sympathy flickering in her eyes. Evelyn stated, "You must make a decision, Anna," her voice becoming more subdued but still unwavering. "Right now. Either confront your actions or further entrench yourself in this quagmire." The headlights of Lucas's vehicle illuminated Anna's pale, stricken visage as they swept across the barn wall, causing her breathing to quicken. She was uncertain as to what she would say or do. She was only aware that every secret and emotion she had suppressed was now on the verge of being revealed. Evelyn's voice was firm and unyielding as she said goodbye to Anna. "This is your opportunity to make a decision, and you are the only one who can do so." Evelyn, Stellan, and the approaching headlamps were the subjects of Anna's gaze. Her mind was a tumultuous tempest, but her heart beat with a clarity that defied all else, as if it were attempting to direct her. The headlamps pierced the darkness, illuminating the barn door and capturing the intricate details of Anna's anxious face in stark clarity. At that moment, she realized that she had no place to flee. She remained immobile as if time had ceased to exist. Evelyn stepped back, allowing Anna to pass, but she did not depart. Evelyn's sharp eyes, which were typically frigid and unyielding, now possessed a quiet, watchful patience, as if she were anticipating Anna's final decision. The vehicle halted immediately outside the barn. Lucas emerged from the vehicle, his tall stature casting a long shadow in the harsh light of the headlamps. The car door closed with a dry clang, and the air was reclaimed by silence. He momentarily scanned the area before moving toward the barn, but he hesitated. "Anna? Are you present?" Lucas's voice was as tranquil as it had always been when he called. However, Anna perceived it as the sound of thunder booming in the still night. She turned toward him, their eyes meeting, and she immediately realized that he was aware of something. He knew, even if it was only an instinctive sensation, or if it was unclear. She said, "I was unable to sleep," her voice as steady as she could manage, despite the tremor in her breath that betrayed her. "I simply wished to inquire about Stellan." Lucas entered the barn, his gaze shifting from Anna to Evelyn, who stood a few steps away, motionless and mute like a shadow. His gaze alternated between the two women, detecting the unsaid tension that permeated the confined quarters. His brows furrowed slightly. "Is there an issue at hand?" he inquired, his eyes penetrating and his tone inquisitive. Evelyn declined to respond. Anna was aware that she would not. This was her opportunity to confront the reality and accept responsibility for the things she had made such a concerted effort to conceal. She now felt as though every avenue had been condensed into a singular point, as if all eyes were on her. She could continue to fabricate lies, thereby exacerbating the oppressive weight of secrets and remorse. Alternatively, she could confront the shame, anguish, and vulnerability that she had been so apprehensive to confront. Her eyes shifted to Evelyn, whose demeanor, despite its tranquility, was replete with an unyielding challenge. Afterward, she turned to Lucas, whose eyes, despite their apprehension, were tinged with a sliver of uncertainty that she could not dismiss. She was aware that she could not continue to run. She began, her voice brimming with emotion. "Lucas, I must inform you of a matter." Lucas's eyes narrowed slightly in bewilderment as he froze. His gaze was fixed on her, and he refrained from interrupting or moving. Evelyn slightly turned her face and stepped away, as if to grant them privacy, although she did not leave the barn. Anna drew in a deep breath, her larynx tangled with every word she wished to express. The moments she had lost herself, the times she had gazed into Stellan's eyes and found the solace Lucas had never been able to provide, were on her mind. She reflected on the yearning, humiliation, and desperation, and she was aware that if she did not speak now, these emotions would hold her captive indefinitely. She uttered, "I felt so alone, Lucas," her voice becoming strained as she began to weep. "I have been experiencing it for an extended period of time, and I am unsure of how to break free. It appears as though all that is between us and with you has been rendered meaningless." Lucas did not respond immediately. He stood there, his eyes alight on hers, as if he were endeavoring to ascertain the truth behind her words. "Anna, what are you expressing?" She could discern the weight of each syllable in his subdued voice. She continued, her voice catching in her larynx, "I have been seeking solace in a location where I should not have. Lucas, I have become disoriented. I am unsure of how to articulate it, but I have crossed a line." Lucas's eyes widened slightly as if he was unable to comprehend what he was hearing, and he stepped back. He repeated, his voice rough and scarcely audible, "I have crossed a line." Anna experienced a sensation of her chest constricting, as if her heart were being compressed by an invisible hand. She stated, "I am unsure of how to articulate it. I am aware that I have exceeded my limits and am unable to reverse the situation." She prepared herself for Lucas's fury, anticipating that he would either scream or flee. However, he refrained from doing so. He remained motionless, gazing at her with a countenance that was a jumble of emotions that she was unable to comprehend. Finally, he spoke, his voice being both subdued and heavy. "Anna, are you still in love with me?" Her remaining defenses were obliterated by that straightforward inquiry. Anna gazed at him, her eyes now beating with tears. "Lucas, I am uncertain. I am no longer aware of the situation. However, I am eager to locate it once more. I am interested in comprehending the reasons for our current state." Evelyn maintained her silence. However, Anna could detect her ever-present, unwavering presence, which observed each event. Lucas exited the barn without uttering a word, turning away. Anna was left standing there, feeling more depleted than she had ever felt, as his figure faded into the dim light of the car's headlamps. Evelyn approached her, her keen eyes now softening with a peculiar gentleness. She stated with a calm yet firm voice, "You made the correct decision." Anna did not respond. She turned to Stellan, who remained in the same position, his profound, dark eyes observing her as if they contained all the answers she was unable to discover. She approached him with a gentle touch, tracing her hand along his mane for the final time. She was aware of her obligation at that precise moment. She had to depart the barn, leaving behind the shadows into which she had allowed herself to become ensnared for an extended period of time. Anna walked away in the cold night, carrying with her all the anguish, regret, and a flicker of hope that, one day, she would find her way back to herself as the moon continued to cast its cold glow outside. The story's just beginning. There are more broken hearts and dark secrets ahead. Hit like, subscribe, and keep exploring with Love Missteps.